There is perhaps no controversy that has dogged President Trump and Steve Bannon more than their both sides' response to the violence and the killing of a counter-protester, Heather Heyer, in Charlottesville at a white supremacy Unite the Right rally just over a year ago. The incident came just a week before Bannon was leaving the White House. Trump's response ignited more pain and revulsion on these searing issues of racism and civil rights. I asked Steve Bannon about the issue today.
Charlottesville.
Yep.
Was the president wrong to say there was blame on both sides?
No, he's absolutely correct. Listen, the whole discussion and what the president was saying, and go back and look at those statements he made. If you look at it, what he's saying is that the discussion about the Confederate monuments, whether the Confederate monuments should be covered, whether the Confederate monuments should be removed, or whether the Confederate monuments of these generals are part of Southern heritage. There are people on both sides, and that's their First Amendment right to debate that and to march on that and to protest that. And that's what he's trying to say.
You said what the president said? Let's look at what...
Hang on. And if he says, where's it all in? If you talk about the neo-Nazis and the neo-Confederates and the KKK and Antifa, I think the president has been adamant in saying that both of those parties are wrong. Both those parties shouldn't be allowed to come there and start to cause havoc, and that authorities ought to shut that down. The president, I think, was very clear on this.
This is what the president said. Let's go to the words. Right. Quote, I think there's blame on both sides. You had a group on one side that was bad, and you had a group on the other side that was also very violent. Nobody wants to say it, but I will say it right now. It was the organizers of the rally that talked about anti-black prejudice, that chanted anti-Semitic slogans, and there's, as you know, a second-degree murder charge for Heather Heyer's death.
He's been
right now
absolutely adamant about this. That's what I'm saying. When you talk about the Confederate monuments and you talk about whether they should stay or not or be covered or not, the president's saying there's good people on both sides, okay? When you talk about the people that come there for violence, he's condemned those people. He condemned the neo-Confederates. He condemned the neo-Nazis. He condemned the KKK. He also condemned Antifa. And if you look at Cuomo the other night, the problem with the left and the problem with the mainstream media, you give Antifa a complete free pass. They are just as violent as the neo-Confederates. They're just as violent as these KKK guys, and they have to be condemned. And that's where you're seeing the violence come from. I've actually advocated, even a situation like Charlottesville, to me, they shouldn't have the right to kind of march because they come looking for a fight. They come to do violence, and what you're seeing is not just a tremendous cost, but you're also seeing violence. And I think the president, I think this is where he's being smeared. I think he's been I don't think he could be more adamant about that. And look at this march that happened the other day. What, nine guys showed up. It's the mainstream media that continues to give marginal people, these marginal guys, a platform and make them bigger than they are.
Let's finish on Charlottesville, and then we can talk about anything you want to bring up. On Charlottesville.
But Sunday was Charlottesville. It was the anniversary.
The anniversary.
Right.
I'm referring to the original time where there was this killing, and there was not a killing on both sides. It was a killing, as you know, on one side.
Steve Bannon is very polarizing. Plenty of people don't want to hear any more from him. But Bob Mueller's not one of them. He did want to hear from Bannon. Today, I was able to press Steve Bannon on why. He told me he is a fact witness to both collusion and obstruction issues in this Russia probe. He told me a story we've never heard directly from Bannon on air before, how he actually first met Bob Mueller inside the Trump White House. This was just days before Mueller was named special counsel, and it was as Mueller was walking into the Oval Office to meet with Donald Trump about the embattled FBI. And we now know that was the last time that Bob Mueller and Donald Trump spoke face-to-face. I also pressed Steve Bannon about his standard for treasonous conduct at that Trump Tower meeting. Here are these key Russia highlights.
So when I basically laid out the facts of what I thought the Comey situation was, if people decide to go in a different direction, then it's not my thing. I'm not there to try to fight things to the very end.
So you advise against it. Walk us through the day he was fired.
Well, the day he's fired, I see it on TV like everybody else. I mean, I'm sitting in the chief of staff's office. I'm working on something for Reince that needs to be done. I see it up on TV.
And what did you think?
I thought, as I said, I thought it was a big mistake, and I thought it would lead to a special counsel. I mean, I think everything I said at the time basically worked itself out. That was going to lead to a special counsel. I think if the Comey investigation had been allowed to continue, it would have taken another couple of months and it wrapped up.
When is the first time during your White House service that you ever talked to Bob Mueller?
Well, Bob Mueller came in, and gave advice or was interviewed, as has been publicly reported, for FBI director. And, Bob Mueller, I was sitting in kind of the outer office, And Mueller actually walks up to me, and I've never met him before in my life. I'm standing actually in back of Hope Hicks at her computer terminal, and we're talking about something. He walks up and says, he just shook hands and said, Steve, I can't believe, Mueller's a Marine. He says, Steve, I can't believe somebody in the senior naval service allowed his daughter to matriculate at West Point. And I just laughed, and I told somebody later, he's a pretty thorough guy to know that. So that's the first time I ever met him.
What was he trying to say to you?
I think he was just trying to. I think he was trying to, just introduce himself. At that time, he was actually there to give advice on the type of person that we should select to be FBI director.
So, this is pretty fascinating. You're there working in the White House right after Comey's fired.
Right.
Bob Mueller walks in, says this to you, and then he what? Goes into the Oval?
Yeah.
You say you're a witness of fact.
Yep.
Which is a good thing for you.
I think so, yeah.
You haven't been advised that you were something worse in their eyes. Are you a witness of fact to the investigation regarding obstruction or collusion or both?
I think I'm a witness of fact for all of it. I think I'm a witness of fact for all of it. I mean, when they call you up there, they don't really kind of bifurcate. They kind of go through the whole thing. And, of course, I've been to Capitol Hill, right, a couple of times. So, I'm a witness of fact up there also.
When you said the Trump Tower meeting with the Russians was treasonous, and you said you meant Paul Manafort.
Yeah.
What about it made it treasonous in your view?
I just didn't look. I think for a professional like Paul Manafort, I don't think you ought to ever have, forget it. Just people from other countries, Russians or whatever, come in and try to get opposition research. There's enough opposition research out there. Look, Clinton Cash to me did all the opposition research you had to do. You just had to get down there and drill down on it. And as we did when I took over the campaign on that Monday, or when I was CEO of the campaign with Kellyanne as campaign manager, on that Monday, the first day we kind of took over, we put out I think a statement from then candidate Trump. It was about Paul Manafort when Manafort was, I think, getting ready to resign, and we've referenced Clinton Cash and her corruption in Clinton Cash.
So by your standard, it's that knowledge of the foreign offer of help.
Well, no, I don't know the foreign offer of help. I think it's even just trying to do something like that. I think is
trying to do something like that. So if Donald Trump knew about that, then he was in on treasonous behavior in your standard.
No, and I'm not. Look, it hasn't been proven that he knew anything about it. We don't know anything. He's knew anything about it. He's denied knowing anything about it.
You said there's zero chance Don Jr. didn't tell him, and Michael Cohen reportedly says Trump knew about it.
Well, you have to take Michael Cohen for Michael Cohen, right? You're just going to have to take. We don't know what Michael Cohen's doing with federal authorities, what deals he's cutting, what he's trying to do with federal authorities.
If a candidate knows about that in advance, then are they part of treasonous behavior by your standard?
I think you have to call into question if somebody's actually out there trying to get information from foreign parties. You have to question it. Yeah.
So if Mueller could prove that about Donald Trump, that would concern you?
It would definitely concern me. Yes, but the president's been pretty adamant that he didn't know about it and hasn't known about it.
Former Trump campaign chief Steve Bannon famously defended Donald Trump against allegations of sexual misconduct, and his political operation doubled down on Roy Moore well after several independent allegations that he preyed on underage girls, decisions that have helped fuel a backlash that ranges from a record-breaking number of female candidates running for office right now this year. It's mostly Democrats running against Trump, plus these growing movements like Me Too and Time's Up. So today I asked Bannon about Time's Up, about the rising opposition to Trump among women, and whether these movements are a constructive force to advance equality and force changes on what he refers to as the patriarchy.
What does Time's Up mean to you?
What Time's Up means to me is at the end of the patriarchy. It's Time's Up and the end of the patriarchy, and what they want to have is a fundamental shift in the power dynamics in society. And so I think you have the Time's Up movement, you have what I call the resistance, and then I think you have Tom Steyer's impeach the president. I think those three elements are kind of the enthusiasm on the left.
Time's Up. So you say challenge the patriarchy. Given the history of gender relations in this country and around the world, and the desire for gender equality, isn't that a good thing to revise the patriarchy, as you put it?
My oldest daughter is a West Point graduate that served with the 101st Airborne. We have a picture of her on the mantle right there, sitting on the throne of Saddam Hussein in her uniform with the 101st Airborne. I'm a huge believer in equality, right? And my daughters, I think, are living proof of that, and the rest of my family. So, no, I'm a huge believer in that. I think there's some justifiable. I think in the Time's Up movement, as a subset of that, some of the things that are going on sexual harassment, particularly in the media companies that have not been vetted with the executives, is something that really needs to be done. And so, yeah, I think I'm not 100% with the Time's Up movement, but I can see it's a very powerful political force. I was the one that said I think somebody like Oprah Winfrey will come out of that movement. It could be actually win the Democratic nomination.
I can't quite tell if you're saying it's a good thing. Bottom line, is it constructive?
I think it is constructive to always review things like this. I think some of the radicalness of that movement is not a positive thing, but I think that it's always good to question your assumptions. And so I think that some of the things that are coming out of it, particularly what we found out in some of these companies, that things that went on, I think is quite positive.
There are people who would observe that the way you talk about your daughter and what you just said about gender relations is very different from the way Donald Trump talks. Times that by a gender gap now that, as you know, is 20 points in negative views of the president. Is this party, let me finish the question and then you get your time.
Sure.
Is this party walking away from women voters or college-educated women voters?
Well, first off, we won, white women 52-48 over Hillary Clinton, the first female nominee in history. I think we won white working-class women something like 69 or 70%, 70-30. And so Donald Trump does resonate with that. I realize.
Let me respond, and then I'll give you more time.
Okay, fine.
The gender gap in 2016 at 11 points was the largest in 20 years.
Right.
Go ahead.
Yeah, no, but I think a lot of that was also minority women, right? And Donald Trump, I think we won 8% of overall African American voters, but I think we had a very big turnout in African American women. But there was never a question.
And I'll give you time. The question is Donald Trump walking away and walking the GOP away from these women voters?
He's definitely not walking away. Look at Ivanka. I think Ivanka has been very engaged in women's issues. She's talking about job training and all these other things. I think she's very engaged. I think you see the way that Donald Trump has a terrific relationship with his daughter and his wife shows that what he thinks about this. I think a lot of things that people jump on some of the tweets, or they've jumped on some of the things that they allegedly happened during the campaign, right? Or women that came out during the campaign to try to stop it as we push through that. Let's go to Billy Bush weekend. I mean, Billy Bush weekend, everybody said he should resign. There's some of the Republican establishment said he should resign. People walked away from the campaign, and what he did is he presented the facts of the locker room talk, and then we went to St. Louis the next night, and I brought the people that Bill Clinton had actually molested, and I think that the American people weighed and measured that and voted in November. And you
brought adult women who were accusers of Bill Clinton,
yes,
and you said they should be heard.
Yes.
And the response from many people is, what about the accusers of Donald Trump? Should they be heard? He threatened to sue them and suggested that would resolve it. He never sued them. He's facing suits from them. And Roy Moore, who you backed, of course, faced his own accusers, including multiple women who say he preyed on them when they were under 18.
By the way,
what about if you're bringing it? You brought it up.
By the way,
you brought it up.
No,
if you're bringing it up, what about those accusers?
By the way, if they want to come forward, they should come forward. If they want to come forward, they should come forward. There are some of them are coming forward in the court system right now. So if they want to come forward, they're not shy about going after Donald Trump. But back to your question, Donald Trump hasn't abandoned women. He has not abandoned women at all. I think if you look at the economy, if you look at what he's doing across the board, that they're the beneficiaries of this. And I think Donald Trump's going to play very well.
But you bring up those accusers.
Yep.
What do you say to people who see your backing of Roy Moore, who was accused of legally worse things, and they think? And I'll finish the question, and you get time. I'll finish.
Hang on, that was vetted. That was
Steve.
Hang on,
Steve, I will finish the question. And I will give you your response time.
Yes, sir.
What do you say to people who say to you, is the only standard here partisanship and whether you like the candidate if you're not giving Roy Moore's accusers the same time?
Well, by the way, Roy Moore's accusers had time during the campaign. They're going to have additional time. They came forward. They had the Washington Post. They had the biggest platforms in media. Roy Moore was buried by that. You can't sit there and reasonably ask, did they not have adequate representation? Did they not have a platform? They had the biggest media platforms in the country.
But
the question gets to be, how legitimate were those? Did they ever turn out to be something? And that's going to be adjudicated.
Did it ever shake your view? Did you ever say,
no,
maybe I shouldn't be with this person?
Absolutely not.
Given what these women allege.
Absolutely not. When we looked because we looked at the allegations. I don't believe them then. I did not believe them then. I do not believe them today. And if they get adjudicated over time, maybe I changed my mind. But from the facts that I saw then and the facts I see now, absolutely not.
Bottom line, and a lot of people disagree vehemently with your view of it, but bottom line, you're saying that what was a historic 11-point gap that currently is 20 with Trump and women, you think somehow it will close?
I think somehow we can definitely close it from 20. Absolutely. Do we get it to the 11? I don't know, but I think we can close it from 20. And I think more importantly, we can close it in those districts that we have to win to hold the House.
Tonight, Donald Trump faces mounting legal and political pressure. A federal jury will take this weekend off before resuming these deliberations on the fate of his campaign manager, Paul Manafort. And Bob Mueller now tonight recommending jail time for former Trump aide George Papadopoulos. That's on the legal side. On the political side, new warnings that Republicans not only trail Democrats by 6 points in polling over who could win the midterms, but a blue wave could mark the effective end of the Trump presidency. Now, that may be motivating for many liberal voters, but Republican leaders are also mobilizing right now. Take this new video that's aiming to rile up conservative turnout by arguing this is now a war for the Trump presidency. It comes from a new multi-million-dollar campaign by former Trump campaign chair and advisor Steve Bannon, returning from exile to help congressional Republicans, whether they want his help or not. Now, Bannon is, as we all know, one of the most controversial figures in U.S. politics for many reasons, but it can be hard to see what's happening in the midterms without seeing what he's up to. Now, people can't decide what to do about developments in our politics if what's happening is not exposed or not known or not confronted. And while Bannon has played quite a big role in conservative politics, he rarely goes on TV. He's never taken questions from an MSNBC journalist on air. And that changes tonight. We are about to air my new interview with Bannon, plus independent analysis, adversarial reaction, and fact-checking from our panel of journalists and political analysts who are with me live. I want to be clear up front, this interview had no ground rules, nothing off limits. We talked about Bannon's project for the midterms, his donors, his policy record in the White House, his political record from Roy Moore to Charlottesville. We talked about the Time's Up movement, his view of James Comey's firing and the Mueller probe. And we talked about why Mueller views him as a witness to both the collusion and obstruction investigation that's going on right now. Bannon also recounts the first time he and Mueller ever spoke at the doorway to Donald Trump's Oval Office. Here is part of our discussion, starting with the midterms.
Let's start with the midterms. If they were held today, who do you think would win the House?
I think if they're held today, we'd have a tough time holding the House. I really do. I think it could be north of 25, maybe 30 seats, maybe north of that. There's people that are projecting today it could be 45 or 50 seats. I believe by November 6th, we're going to win this. I think all this takes is people on our side of the football focusing on what has to happen. This is an up or down vote on President Trump. You know, this election is going to come as a referendum on him. He permeates the entire political culture. And I think those that are around him are telling him that, hey, it's okay to lose the House. You can work with the Democrats and you can run against a Democratic House in 2020. It's bad advice. We have a C4 now, and I've actually made a film that's very much focused on getting out the Trump base, the deplorables plus the blue-collar Democrats. I think the opposition party media and the Democrats did succeed in one thing. I think they did get a do-over to 2016, and I think this is his first re-election.
You said you are going to save the Trump presidency in these midterms. Does he know that he needs you to save him?
Well, I don't think the quote was we're going to save him. What we're trying to do is actually get this message focused. The message is about President Trump. It's about a referendum on President Trump. To me, it's an up or down vote. I think the Democrats, and particularly the grassroots Democrats, are running as an impeachment campaign. I think our side has to understand that. You just can't run on tax cuts. You have to run on the entire package of the Trump presidency.
You think impeachment's on the ballot in November? Why?
Absolutely. Because, number one, Tom Steyer and the grassroots of the Democratic Party have put it on the ballot, and so has Nancy Pelosi. Right now, Ari, when they say they're not talking about impeachment, it's because they've looked at the crosstabs in the polling, and they understand when we put impeachment on the ballot that it is a way to get all of the deplorables out. Even if the congressman in your district is a rhino, that you have to come out to support President Trump. Look, people on the Democratic left, you saw grassroots, Netroots Nation a couple weeks ago. There are people in these districts in July in 90-degree heat going door to door. The reason they're going door to door is they're talking about the impeachment of President Trump. And so all we're saying is that, hey, it's already on the ballot. Let's do it.
Your new group is Citizens of the American Republic. You say we're at war. What does that really mean?
Well, the film says Trump at war. I mean, the film is about Trump. You know, Trump's at war against the permanent political class.
The film is your film.
Yeah, the film is my film. It's a film called Trump at War, and it shows you that Trump is is at war with the permanent political class, the opposition party media, and basically he's at economic war with China. And so I think that when you look at this film, you see that President Trump is a disruptor and an innovator, and you see that he is kind of delivering on the promises he put forward to the American people, that he's not into just managing the decline of the country, but he's going to try to turn the country around. And so that's what the film is. I think it's a film that is focused on getting our base jacked up and our base out. Because if we don't get our base out on November 6th, we're going to have a very bad day at the polls. And so it's very important that the Trump voter and the invisible Trump voter show up like a presidential year. It's very important for us to show up. What do you
say to Republicans who say, why should they take your help if you haven't backed winning candidates in the special elections thus far?
Well, I think I did back winning candidates in the primary, and the Republican establishment in Alabama, Roy Moore specifically. I mean, Roy Moore would have won that election if Mitch McConnell and Shelby and these others hadn't turned against him. And so I think we've got a very good feel for how to win, a very good feel of how to turn people out. You know, I've been very involved in this since the Tea Party, the Tea Party election in 2010. So I think we have a very good idea of how to make these films, and how to get people out.
You bring up Roy Moore. How can you blame Republicans in Washington for what happened out in Alabama? Didn't the voters there make up their mind?
Well, Shelby came out on Sunday morning on national TV and said, I'm not voting for Roy Moore. I'm doing a write-in. You know, McConnell was the guy. It's the Republican establishment that dumped all this stuff to the Washington Post that turned against him when their candidate got smoked in the primary. So it was the Republican establishment that said from day one, we're not only going to support Roy Moore, they were already meeting to unseat Roy Moore and not to seat him if he'd even won. So that was the Republican establishment turning against, and they were sending a signal. They would rather even lose control of the Senate than to allow disruptors in there.
How much money does your group have?
We've raised, quite a bit of money. I mean, we've made a pretty impressive film. We're going to release the film. I've got a 25-person staff. We run a war room every day. We do talking points. We do messaging.
$5 million?
Over $5 million. Yes.
Over $10 million?
I don't want to put a specific number on it.
Is it fair to say you have right now between $5 and $10 million?
I think it's fair to say that we've got enough resources and even more resources pouring in from donors, and we're eventually going to start a small donor program. By the way, I've never had a problem getting resources. Whether it was with Breitbart or doing other things, I've always had, because I've always delivered.
You're also very rich, and you know a lot of rich people.
I've had a pretty good run, and I do know some high net worth individuals. Yes.
Who is funding this group?
Well, it's private donors. It's just private donors, just like in the Democratic Party and some of these groups. It's private donors.
Why not tell people who they are?
Well, because I think the donors want to be private. It's the law, and they got the full right to do that. If they want to come forward,
the law allows them to go public or private.
If they want to come forward, if donors want to come forward, they can come forward.
Does it include Wall Street people, finance people, hedge fund people?
It definitely includes hedge fund people. Yes, absolutely. I think you would say we're very much focused on we're the China hawk. C4. I'm very upfront about, I think, what the situation is with China, and I would tend to think that there are people that back this that are China hawks.
So for you, it may be ideology. For them, they want to make money off what comes out of these elections because of their positions on China?
No. I think it's because of their patriotism.
Do they have
I don't think it's enough money in this.
Do they have an investment outcome, though, in terms of their positions that they can benefit from this?
No.
Is there anyone you wouldn't?
It's really, I think, more about what they think the direction of the country is.
Is there anyone you would not take money from?
Well, I would not take money from foreigners, right? And there's certain people. I'm pretty selective about who I take money from. I've always had good partners. Always had partners that have been pretty happy. So I'm pretty selective about who I take money from. But I've never had a problem raising money. And I think you see, particularly in Wall Street and others, you see a lot of people that come from hardscrabble backgrounds or blue collar backgrounds that see that like this populism, that like economic nationalism, that kind of like the Trump program, that are pretty supportive.
But your critics say that you talk a lot of smack about Wall Street, but then you're funded by Wall Street. Your new group, you're admitting, is funded
not funded by Wall Street, but funded by certain individuals.
Well, you just told me it includes financiers and includes people with a position in China, is what you just said.
No, people that understand our position in China, the people that understand that we're kind of the China hawks. I didn't say they had a position in China.
But the question you understand, though, is how do you take on Wall Street if you're funded by Wall Street?
Well, by the way, individuals on Wall Street, some of the biggest guys on Wall Street are quite anti the antics that Wall Street's been up to. I came out of Wall Street. I was at Goldman Sachs. You kind of know what the game is. Just because you've made some money on Wall Street, or just because you're currently in a hedge fund, doesn't mean you don't know what the practices of Wall Street are. I think in fact, I think it's been a great way for some people that are blue collar, have come from blue collar backgrounds to actually get ahead.
The main piece of economic legislation that has been passed in the Trump administration is the tax bill. Most of those benefits go to the very wealthy. Was that a mistake?
Well, no. Hang on for a second. The tax bill, the central part of the tax bill was also the corporate tax bill, was to make sure that we were competitive with Germany and China. And if you look at manufacturing jobs coming back here, it's part and parcel of this the situation we're in with the tariffs, the economic package and the tax package. That was the central part of it. So you look at manufacturing jobs and hand.
I hear you globally.
No, I'm talking not
tax
globally.
policy says 83% of the benefits.
Not globally.
Go to the top 1%.
Not globally. I'm talking about what happened here. What happened here in manufacturing jobs coming back. That's why you've got such economic growth in the country. One of the reasons is the tax bill. Now, I didn't actually love some of the things on the personal income tax. Remember, the Wall Street Journal reported in the Oval Office, I fought for a 44% tax for people making over $5 million. I lost that fight, but it's not that can't be readdressed sometime in the future.
When you see 83% going to the top 1%, is that too much?
I think what's important is what's happening with corporate America, is that corporate America is becoming more competitive, and we're repatriating $3 trillion of cash to come back here and invest in the United States. I think this is about manufacturing jobs, and I think if you look at President Trump's overall economic agenda, it's working. It's working for middle class and working class people.
You talk about populism.
Yes.
The president went to Mar-a-Lago, where membership is $200,000, and told people the tax bill meant, quote, you all just got a lot richer. Is that your populism?
Look, I think populism, when you look at President Trump, is about his entire program, okay? This tax cut was focused on industrial tax cut, on repatriation of cash. It was to make the manufacturing side of this country stronger. We had the 100% write-off of capital expenditure in period zero. This was all about rebuilding the manufacturing base, and that is the type of populism I'm talking about. Am I totally excited about every aspect of the tax bill? Not that excited. Remember, I was a big supporter of Paul Ryan's border adjustable tax, and that didn't go anywhere. So we went to Plan B. So, and do I think this can get better over time? Absolutely. But I think, given the context and given the situation, this is a very strong tax bill. I go through the whole thing. And of course, I've been to Capitol Hill, right, a couple of times. So, I'm a witness of fact up there also.
When you said the Trump Tower meeting with the Russians was treasonous, and you said you meant Paul Manafort.
Yeah.
What about it made it treasonous in your view?
I just didn't look. I think for a professional like Paul Manafort, I don't think you ought to ever have, forget it, just, people from other countries, Russians or whatever, come in and try to get opposition research. There's enough opposition research out there. Look, Clinton Cash, to me, did all the opposition research you had to do. You just had to get down there and drill down on it. And as we did when I took over the campaign on that Monday, or when I was CEO of the campaign with Kellyanne as campaign manager, on that Monday, the first day we kind of took over, we put out I think a statement from then candidate Trump. It was about Paul Manafort when Manafort was, I think, getting ready to resign, and we referenced Clinton Cash and her corruption in Clinton Cash.
So by your standard, it's that knowledge of the foreign offer of help.
Well, no, I don't know the foreign offer of help. I think it's even just trying to do something like that. I think is
trying to do something like that. So if Donald Trump knew about that, then he was in on treasonous behavior in your standard.
No, and I'm not. Look, it hasn't been proven that he knew anything about it. We don't know anything. He's done know anything about it. He's denied knowing anything about it.
You said there's zero chance Don Jr. didn't tell him, and Michael Cohen reportedly says Trump knew about it.
Well, you have to take Michael Cohen for Michael Cohen, right? You're just going to have to take. You don't know what Michael Cohen's doing with federal authorities, what deals he's cutting, what he's trying to do with federal authorities.
If a candidate knows about that in advance, then are they part of treasonous behavior by your standard?
I think you have to call into question if somebody's actually out there trying to get information from foreign parties. You have to question that. Yeah.
So if Mueller could prove that about Donald Trump, that would concern you?
It would definitely concern me. Yes, but the president's been pretty adamant that he didn't know about it and hasn't known about it.
When we come back, we get into Charlottesville and more from our live panel tonight.